Going live, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
This is the Hot Pole Position, and this is episode number 6. I am your host, Adam Steele.
I'm Liam Wright.
Yes, he is. And today is going to be quite an interesting podcast, I think. I mean, for a channel that talks about music production and tech, this is a big week because Apple are being Apple, but they're being very Apple all at once. And there's so much to talk about, not just with the Mac Pro, but also iPads and ipadOS, iOS 13, some of the upgrades that are going to be there, the ridiculous cost of the new screens, the ridiculous cost of everything, to be honest. There's just so much to talk about, debunk, justify, discuss, and all sorts of things. Before we talk about that company, though, how are you?
Me? I'm good. Good. Been in the studio today doing some filming, which is always nice and fun.
Good stuff.
I decided to use the lapel mic though because I was terrified of the computer deciding it was going to die when I touched it. So.
Yes, because of your track record. Yes.
Yeah, I decided that I will not touch or press buttons. I'll use the lapel. So hopefully it won't sound too bad.
I'm sure it'll be fine. I mean, a little bit of a 500 hertz dip, a bit of 4K push, it'll be fine.
Yeah, it's just not. It's kind of really should be matching with the 416. So, but it'll be alright. It's a separate module.
Yeah, well, if it's a separate module, I'm sure we can EQ them to be close enough.
Yeah, no, so that was good. I'd already got back from a holiday, sorting the wedding out last time we did the show. So, yeah, just filming really for me. How about
Good
you?
stuff.
You look, your eyes look more human.
Yes, my eyes are white today. My left eye's still a little bit cloudy, actually, which is a little bit weird. But it doesn't feel like there are demons with claws inside of my skull anymore, which is a marked improvement. I've not actually been into the studio at all this week, mostly because I've been recovering from that, but also I've just been editing from home, and I finally managed to get the new version of the Reaper video out, and I spent the last 2 days doing all the transcription for the subtitles, which is something I really want to get onto doing more on more of our videos, because I'm convinced that having good subtitles helps the videos out.
Yeah, makes sense.
I mean, not just with people watching the subtitles, but then there's an accurate base for translation, which means that the global audience have got a much more accurate translation, even if it's auto-translated, Google translated, if the source material's more accurate, rather than it trying to pick up on what I'm saying and getting half of it wrong, which you can, if you're smart enough and you're reading the automatic subtitles in English, you get the idea, but I think translating that into another language, you're on dodgy ground.
SEO is also relevant to the subtitles as well. Google can read them. It takes the keywords out of the videos.
Yes.
So having subtitles will help the listings for that reason, mainly.
Yes, especially with kind of nerdy technical videos like ours, I don't think the automatic subtitles know half of those words. So if I go in and type the whole thing out, I mean, this video that we've just released was just over an hour long. It took me 2 days to transcribe it. And
Jesus.
yeah, I'm not exactly slow at transcription because, bit of personal history, my mother used to do transcription for a job, and she taught me how to touch type. I'm nowhere near as good as she is. But the idea is there, and she used to have a cassette machine that had foot pedals so she could go backward and forward without taking her hands off the keyboard. She was doing something like 130 words a minute or something stupid, which is way beyond what I can do. But, you know, I'm not slow with it, and it still took me ages. I mean, it didn't take 2 straight days. I was looking after a baby and that kind of thing at the same time, but still, you know, it took probably half the time it took to edit the entire video to do the transcription.
Mm-hmm.
If I can, though, I'm going to see if I can get my mum to do some of the transcription for me.
That would be useful.
Yeah, if she's available, because, like I said, she's got this serious skill set. And if she's got any free time, she might not, but that could be quite useful, because especially with some of the technical videos, I mean, hey, if we can get more of an international viewership, I think that's a big thing. A lot of the comments that we get on our videos, especially the tutorial stuff, are not in English, which means that people are obviously watching from non-English speaking countries.
Hmm.
And so that's almost an untapped market. But if our source material, like I was saying, is translatable well enough that people can understand it and get the right information from it, I think that's
definitely.
a massive untapped market.
Yeah, there's loads on like Linda and stuff, all the music tutorials on there. Some of the most popular ones are ones that are in sort of like Spanish and French, and just generally not the universal language of English.
Mm.
'Cause, yeah, it's a bit harder to find that sort of content. Um, I thought I typed fast, and I apparently type at 80 words per minute. So that's insane.
Yeah,
130.
so, but it's like, I can probably type around 80 as well, but there's typing at 80, and there's transcribing at 80. And
Gotcha.
my mum can transcribe at half as fast again, which is literally at conversational pace. She'll be listening to something she's never heard before, and it will be coming out of her fingers.
Yeah. If someone's talking at a decent pace, I can keep up with them, but I couldn't keep up with the conversation just where two people are naturally just talking. That's insane.
Yeah, and well, she is still in meetings. What she'll do is she'll write in shorthand, which is all squiggles and stuff, but she'll write that in real time as people are talking, and then type that up later, which makes my head hurt. But then she used to do medical transcription as well.
Mhm.
So there's transcription, and then there's medical words.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
Hydra, floppy, walla walla.
yeah, and it's like, how even? Yeah, but yeah. So she taught me how to type that kind of stuff. But there's teaching someone how to do it, and then there's just being really good at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just going to show everybody this really nerdy screen. This is the stats for the new Reaper video. It came out on Monday. If you haven't seen it, check it out if you're interested in using Reaper. I made a video a couple of years ago, which was the Basics 101 Reaper, which was supposed to be a kind of a filler video, which is why it's this very webcam that I'm using now in my old bedroom when we lived up in the Lake District, and it was done live. And it was supposed to be kind of a cool thing, but it was never really supposed to be the be-all and end-all, because even around that, we were filming these high-quality, properly produced videos with proper lighting, cameras, editing, and so it was supposed to be kind of an in-between one, and it just rocketed in terms of popularity. And so since then, I've definitely sat down and gone, yeah, we should really redo that. We had so much user feedback, so many questions. I tried to incorporate them all, and the original video I think was 35 minutes long, and this one's just over an hour on the same subject, but trying to include pretty much every question that people asked. Some of the stuff that was really obvious when it was asked. Things like kind of, why aren't I hearing any sound out of my computer when I press play? Sounds so obvious, but then you think, hang on, you've got an audio interface plugged in, the sound's going to come out of that and not out of your computer, which, when you state it very plainly like that, you suddenly go, oh yeah, of course, that makes sense. But to a complete beginner, why wouldn't the sound come out of your computer? Why wouldn't the sound come out of your laptop? Yeah, stuff that's, when you've done it once, it's really obvious, but this video is targeted at people who haven't done it once, I guess. And so it's aimed more like that. It's properly structured, it's properly segmented. Yeah.
But with these sorts of things, I think they're always good, even if you're kind of at another level, because you may have learned some bad habits very early on and do things in a different way. And you find that, I remember sort of going back and doing a HTML course years after I could write HTML on Treehouse, and going through it, I was like, oh, okay, that's come in more recently, and I don't use that, and I've never bothered to learn it because I can get around it, but actually that's way better at doing it that way. So watching videos like this, sometimes you can find little things that you've always done wrong or that someone else does differently or better. So,
yeah, definitely. There are a lot of ways that I found to do things better in Reaper over the years that I'm probably showing people as the way to do it. Yeah, so it makes a lot of sense. But yeah, something that's really interesting is this is an hour long, and the average view duration is 13.5 minutes almost.
Mhm.
So I think we've done okay in keeping people watching.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And you can see this is the new analytics on YouTube Studio. And this grey line right here is the average that we get in terms of views over a day, 2 days, 3 days. And the blue line is the Reaper video so far. Boom. And I've not even yet been on to all the Facebook groups and that kind of thing and put links in, told people about it, because I wanted to make sure that, you know, the thumbnails were right, the end cards were right, the cards, the subtitles, everything was right. I've even gone so far as to make timestamps for the entire thing, put them in a comment and pin it.
That's good.
Because one of the big feedbacks that I got for a month after releasing the old one is we need timestamps. Which for something that long, an hour long, makes a lot of sense now to me. That I wouldn't have thought of at the time, because if it's that long and it's broken up into chunks, people can just skip to that chunk and then skip back and, hey, great. So, yeah, it's the kind of thing that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's good.
And of course, we're rich. We've got $3 whole dollars. Yes. So, yes, if you've not checked that out, check it out. Because I've been ill, there's so many videos that are on the way, and even watching this back and editing it, I've been making notes. I think I've got another 6 or 7 sections of the Reaper video that I've now started to sketch out. But that's going to be relatively easy to film, because I can put the skeleton down on paper and then flesh it out and then do them all in the same day. But then it's going to just take forever editing them. But that shouldn't be too bad, because if I find an hour somewhere where I've got nothing else I can do, that kind of thing, I can crack on with that, and that's going to be an ongoing project. I'm also at some point planning on renewing my subscription to Pro Tools. Not Pro Tools first, actual Pro Tools, and then doing a very similar video for Pro Tools. Especially now I've redone this Reaper video, I'm feeling a lot more confident on going through that. Because now I've got my structure down, now I've got presentation style down.
Is the Pro Tools video going to be an hour of you opening Pro Tools, shutting Pro Tools, opening Reaper, and then watching this video?
I may mention it once or twice. David,
this is how you learn Pro Tools: open Pro Tools, close Pro Tools, go to YouTube, search up all studios, click on Reaper video, watch video. There you go, done. Yeah, just take that.
You know what? Oh no, I don't have the right temperament for it, but I've got a load of videos I want to do with this laptop that I've got, this cheap Lenovo laptop, but I might film them all, and the very last one is film a spoof of this is how you do Pro Tools, and then take it into a field and light it on fire. But not before filming the serious stuff. No, I like that computer too much now. Yeah. It's become my go-to machine when I'm not doing editing, because this laptop I'm using right now weighs as much as a dog. And so having it on your lap after a while gets quite painful, where that one's quite reasonable. And because they made so damn many of them, all the replacement parts are dirt cheap. The battery's kind of dying on it, so I was looking on eBay thinking, oh god, how much is a new battery going to be? Tenner.
Oh, right, wow, okay.
Yeah, whereas my main laptop, it was 70 quid for a replacement battery. It's a bit of a difference.
Ouch.
But that's it, because so many of these things were made because all the businesses in the land bought thousands of them. The parts are just there. It's great.
Do you remember last year when I went to ESL Birmingham, the Dota tournament, and and Raz broke my car by just putting his foot in it?
I don't remember that.
Remember, I didn't have my car for like 4 months because I was waiting for them to get the part.
I remember that, but I don't remember the exact detail.
Yeah, it was something to do with Raz. Raz was in the car. He put his foot forward and leant back to get something out the boot, and somehow managed to push a cable against a piece of metal in the car and fuse a fuse box that isn't meant to be taken out, the big fuses. and it took 4 months to get my car back and fixed.
That's what that was.
So Raz came with me again this year, and we
Right.
got all the way to Birmingham this time without any issues until the tyre pressure light comes on, and Raz gets out the car and goes, "There's a slit in your tyre." I had to get a new tyre, £180.
Oof.
Luckily, they had a budget one, so I had to leave it there overnight, free parking. It still cost me 90 quid though.
Well, yeah. Oof.
So yeah, that was something else that happened this week. The Dota tournament was awesome though.
Good stuff.
We stayed until 4 a.m. in a LAN cafe in Birmingham, which was hilarious as well. So playing Dota all night. Such hardcore people. What did you do this weekend? Went out and went to a tabletop game and played a board game as well because we're so hardcore.
Sounds brutal. Yeah, my weekend this weekend's going to be a little different to that. So I've got Ivy all day tomorrow because the nursery's closed. Then I'm working, as our audience will know, I do some part-time work running a bar, as well as doing everything else that I do because I'm insane. And then, so tomorrow, I do have the day off, and then it's my birthday, ladies and gentlemen. I will be 33 years old.
Wow.
Yes, I know. Well, you're older than me. You've already hit that, surely. Yeah. You're not 30. You're older than that, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm 34 this year.
Yeah. So yes, it's gonna be my birthday tomorrow, but as well as doing family things, I'm then also going to go and drive to play a show. Because rock and roll, and because they couldn't find a replacement, I'm just too damn irreplaceable. So I get to go and play bass and sing, which is always fun. But then I'm going to, when that's finished, swing by the bar and probably work till about 5 in the morning. Rock and roll.
Wow.
But seeing as though it's my birthday, I'll probably not remember the end of it, so it's all good. Yeah, I have a feeling I'll be sleeping in the car. Or I may wake up on one of the sofas at the bar.
That sounds like a good night to me, though.
Absolutely. Yeah, when I say I'll be working, I mean I'll probably turn up, pull a few pints for people, and then be made to drink half of the ones that I pull. So, you know, when you put it that way, people would say, "Oh, you're working on your birthday." It's like, well. Yeah. So, yeah, and then Sunday I'm going to have a massive headache. I'm planning on it.
That's the plan.
That is the plan. So, let's get down to the meat of today's conversation, shall we? That is to say, today is everything Apple, which, if you guys have seen any of the Mac versus PC videos that we've done, today may be the day for a certain upper echelon of our audience that most of what I was saying changes. It's quite a momentous week on the podcast because up until this point, the entire time that the Hot Pole Studios YouTube channel has existed, I would argue there has not been a legitimate professional Mac in existence.
Okay.
And that changes now, I think. So, yeah. The Cheese Grater, ladies and gentlemen. The Cheese Grater makes a return. This beast.
We were literally talking about that like last week, weren't we?
Yeah, we were saying, yeah, it's about time for it to make a comeback. And there it is. I mean, I actually don't think it's that pretty. I think the older one had more of a cool look about it. But it's distinctive. You'll see that from the other side of a studio and you'll go, oh, a Mac Pro. And I think it's quite a clever design where it's kind of passive. It's got fans in the front, but then all the bits inside don't have their own fans. It's all kind of convection stuff. It's really quite clever. But one of the reasons that I was saying in the older videos that Apple didn't have a genuine professional contender is because this, the trash can Mac, was, in my opinion at least, a huge design misstep. Because it wasn't designed for what professionals need, generally speaking.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And when I'm not talking just about performance, I'm talking about the everything else. Everything else that goes with it. What say you, Liam?
Yeah, I kind of felt that, yeah, exactly what you're saying. It didn't really fit in with the aesthetic, and it's just the price. You just feel like you're paying for the design, and that's just an aesthetic. Whereas if you want something fast and powerful, you want it to be fast and powerful, and that's what matters. What it looks like is nowhere near and of it sort of relevant at all.
Yeah.
So,
Oh,
and for
that's
the
part
price of
of it,
one
I
of these,
think.
you could build like 2 decent computers, couldn't you?
Yeah, but then you could definitely say that about the new one, where the price starts at $6,000.
Yeah.
And that's for an 8-core with a 256 gig SSD, which is the same size as I've got in that Lenovo Lenovo laptop that I got. But yeah, if I was going to buy one of these as an audio guy, I think I would probably be paying $10,000 to $12,000 or pounds for the spec that I would want. But the thing is, if you're one of those people who's like, we want the best of the best, we want to be seen to be using a Mac, and for especially higher parts of the industry, I don't really see a problem with that. It's not what I would do, but I get it. The base model is never going to be powerful enough to do what you're going to do with one of these things. But then, especially as an audio producer, you don't need to spend the silly money on the super duper graphic stuff. Someone in chat says, Apple is only charging that much because people don't buy as many products from them anymore. I seriously contend that. Apple are probably about 100 times larger as a company than they were when the original G5 Mac Pro came out. And
Yeah, they are, but there is like stats recently, like iPhone sales have dropped massively, and so have tablet sales. Tablet sales even more so, because people aren't buying as many devices as they were.
True, but they're still an order of magnitude larger than they were as a company.
Yeah.
They may not be selling as many as they did a couple of years ago, but compared to 10 years ago, they are absolutely laughing.
Sales fell 17% this quarter.
Yeah, but that's Q1 sales. They always come back up. Q1 is...
Okay, go on.
So they're not doing as well this year, but that's like, oh no, we're only making $750 billion compared to, ballpark figure, compared to what it used to be. They have, if I remember rightly, over $1 trillion in the bank. They could just buy a small country. They compared to every other large company in the world, they're not riding on their reputation whilst being massively in debt. They have a well of cash, which is so unusual. They don't, quote-unquote, need the money. Part of the pricing, I think, is to offset the design, which I kind of get. Part of it is the classic Apple tax. Whatever anyone else is charging, you stick 30% on it, and that's Apple.
Yeah, at least, yeah.
That's the way Apple have been for a long time. And yeah, it's going to be really, really painful to look at the full customized pricing when that comes out, just because things like RAM upgrades and drive upgrades are going to be way above and beyond what you would pay for any other company to upgrade stuff. But again, the kind of people this is aimed at, I think, are the kind of people who work in either this industry or the video industry, animation industry, who want ridiculous performance, the kind of stability where if you're sending it back, they better damn fix it quick, but don't necessarily have a super nerdy technical knowledge of computers that they could build one and maintain it themselves. And that's a segment. That is quite a large segment.
See, it was a segment though, but it's had to be filled with something else for the past almost 5, 6, 10 years.
Yeah.
I just think I don't know. I don't see us coming back to the age where you see a Mac in every design studio anymore, because it
Yeah,
just doesn't make sense.
I get that.
Like,
I
there's
suppose
another
the
other
other thing is,
companies that build things reliably. The one thing that Apple don't actually have a good reputation for, especially at the moment, is their support. Um, like, if things break within a certain time, they've been notorious for fighting things left, right, and center at the moment. So I'd much rather, if I couldn't build a PC myself, I'd much rather go to a company that sells pre-built ones and buy one of them than buy an Apple at the moment, because I know that it
mm,
would cost me a fraction of the cost, and it'd be just as reliable.
yeah, I suppose the other
And
thing is,
on again, do you know what I mean? Like, I think there's so few people that have moved to Mac have to buy all the programs on Mac again.
yeah,
I suppose
well,
they're great.
most programs that you get, unless we're talking lockdown ones like Logic, you don't buy a license for macOS or Windows or whatever anymore. You just buy the program with multiple binaries to just use on whatever platform you have. So that's a thing that used to be a thing and now isn't. Especially when the original G5 Mac Pro came out, you bought programs that were written for that, where now it's largely the same damn program with a different tick box at the compile stage. Yeah, and a lot of the traditional market for high-end Macs, like photo editors, those kind of guys, like heavy Photoshop users, don't need ridiculous computers anymore comparatively.
Depends on the size of the product, the files you're working with.
Yeah, but what used to be terrifyingly large as a Photoshop file back when the Mac G5 came out is almost considered pedestrian now, like
Yeah.
4K images with multiple layers. If you've got 128 gigabytes of RAM in there, which isn't completely unreasonable, and an 8-core processor, which is the baseline model of the new Mac, or a decent desktop system that you can get for just over £1,000 now, it'll run blisteringly fast, where it used to be that you had to pay ridiculous money to be able to get to that level. Whereas definitely high-end video editors, you still need blistering performance. Did you see there's a new card that Apple have made, a slot card, which natively decodes like 8K ProRes RAW and 4K ProRes RAW?
No?
Yeah, it's called the Afterburner. And it can do 3 streams of 8K ProRes RAW, or I think it was 12 streams of 4K ProRes RAW simultaneously, so that the processor itself doesn't do any of the work. That's it's a really nice pro option. God knows how much it's going to cost, but
Like a modern version of my old Matrox.
yes, yeah, because or the Red Rocket cards, which are actually less powerful than just an Nvidia 1080 now. Yeah, but that's another thing. If Apple ever get Nvidia support officially back, that could kill the Afterburner card, because red footage was notoriously difficult to work with in real time. So pro users would get these Red Rocket cards that would natively decode it. And then Nvidia came along and said, hey, with this special driver, you can just use our graphics cards and we'll do that. That's fine. The Red Rocket became irrelevant overnight.
Yeah.
And now you can decode 2 or 3 8K red streams using an Nvidia card, and the Red Rocket X, which was the replacement, can't hack it. So, yeah.
I mean, Macs are cool. The OS is nice. I was talking to someone about Mac OS today, actually, and in the studio. And the one thing I always do tend to find with OS is that I don't feel the need to close lots of things down to do what I need to do. Whereas with Windows, I feel like the only thing I'm ever doing is opening up Task Manager and seeing what else I can close.
Oh, that's interesting. I wonder if that's just to do with the capabilities of the machine that you're on, though, and what you're trying to do.
Yeah, but I say whenever I've used a Mac and I've been trying to push it, I kind of, I've never kind of experienced the sort of stability issues that you get with Windows. I think that's what I'm going for. I feel
No,
that Mac OS is more stable. Like I'm closing things down because it's not performing how it should do, as opposed to I'm pushing it too hard and I just want to try and give it more power. No, what I mean is I'm doing something I've done before. It should be fine. Now it's being iffy. Whereas with a Mac, it does always seem that if it works once, it will always work. If it doesn't work once, then the first time then it won't work, and that's you live with it. But
I wonder how much of that is psychological, because I've definitely had to have the task manager open on Mac OS 10.10 and 10.11 before, depending on what I'm doing, and really trying to find what's causing 800% processor usage, because they calculate it slightly differently. They calculate it as per core rather than a grand total, but still, yeah, I've dealt with both. I've definitely dealt with it more on Windows machines, but I think that's because, as a general rule, there are a lot more lower end, less stable, cheaply built Windows machines, which does kind of drag the average down and then give you that impression. Because I've never had a qualm in saying that Apple's desktop and laptop machines are equivalent to high-end equivalents in the PC market. They are high-end machines, that I will give them every time. But then, if you were to spec a high-end PC equivalent, I've had very similar results whenever I've done that. It's only ever been when you're comparing kind of a lower-end PC with a bad experience that you've had with any kind of Mac that I think that's almost an unfair fight.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. So
what are the actual specs of this thing then?
So the base specs were that it starts off with an 8-core Xeon CPU, one of the newer Xeons. I think it started with 32 gigs of memory and a 256 gig SSD and a Radeon Pro 580X, which is a generation old, really. And that thing's $6,000.
Jesus.
Yeah. However, if you look at the
How much would that be? I mean, without the case, you're looking at what, like 900 quid?
Yeah, something along those lines. Maybe a little more. Maybe 1,100, 1,200, but still nothing like 6,000.
That's a $5,000 case, and then you need. I know this isn't the one with the stand, is it? That's the screen.
No, that's another thing to talk about. Is that damn screen? Ugh. But the thing that does interest me about this is the potential maximums, because you get into the realm of untouchable in the PC world, unless we're talking extreme workstations, where you can have a 28-core Xeon, 1.5 terabytes of memory. Yeah, that's getting silly. And these graphics cards that they're going to be doing, which are called the Radeon Pro Vega 2, which has 2 full Vega chips on the same card. But they're in this really interesting form factor that I thought was really fascinating, where it's got 2 kind of slots in a row, like a PCI Express slot, but then a different one behind it. What did they call it? MPX, I think it was. And it looked a bit like this image. I'll just zoom this in. This is VLB, or Visa Local Bus. This is from computers in the early 90s, and if you see these 2 in a row, this is before the Pentium was a thing, and graphics cards would usually come in that kind of black slot there, but then when they became super powerful, they also used this one at the back here, which was to do with really getting as much juice out of the system as possible. And they've kind of gone back to that. Let's see if I can find... Yeah, MPX modules. So they're passively cooled, but it turns out that what they're doing... that's the cooling system, by the way. So these little black tubes down here, that's one of the graphics cards. It doesn't have any fans or anything in that, but it means that the air coming from the front gets tunneled through, which I thought was kind of clever. But you don't have power cables or anything going to the graphics card. That secondary slot behind it can provide up to 500 watts of power, as well as extra data and all sorts of extra
This
coolness.
is the inside of the thing, right?
Yeah.
And they're ports, aren't they?
They're what, above it?
Yeah.
Above it, yeah.
And that's like, above that as well. That little strip.
Yeah, so I'm not entirely sure what's on that strip, but there are some ports
They
inside
look
it.
like they can't be, no. They look like display ports or something.
I don't quite know what's going on there, but there is internal stuff in here.
Can you click to make it big?
It's not getting bigger on this particular... They've not released that much detail yet. Within the next week, they're going to be giving out lots and lots of detail. But what we do know is there are 8 PCI Express by 16 slots, which is a massive deal for professionals. I think that's fantastic. It's something that they've done right for a change, because it means that PCI Express is the future. It's what everything plugs into, and this is always one of my problems with the Trashcan Mac, is there's nowhere to plug stuff into. Because with the greatest respect to people like Apple, they don't know what professionals are going to do with these machines, simply because when they invent them and release them, quite often the hardware hasn't been invented yet that's going to go in it.
Yeah.
Stuff like that Matrox card that we had, which was kind of a native... It was a full-length PCI Express card that could decode HD video in real time back in the mid-2000s, which was pretty much unheard of.
Oh, yeah, when it came out, it was like, you have one of these or you don't edit HD video. Like,
Yeah.
It offloaded all of it, and obviously gave you your second monitor as well, so that your graphics card wasn't handling even the output of the stuff that you're editing. So
Yeah, that's right. So, but those kind of cards, or whatever it is that we might choose to go in here, might not exist yet. And so having these PCI Express slots that will go all the way back, there's even these little ridges down here where that Matrox card was this long, and you would probably slot the end in to stop it wobbling around. But these two big tubes down here, they're the graphics cards. So, sounds like they're going to thermal throttle in true Mac style. Actually, I don't think they will. This big block up here, that's the CPU block, and it's got a big, massive heatsink on it. And there's 3 big, massive fans at the front. So there's going to be constant airflow through there. And I actually think in terms of design, this is probably one of the better ones they've done. That's the way that most server racks work. If you've ever looked inside a professional modern server, nothing in there has fans on it anymore. And everything's designed in like a wind tunnel setup. And then either at the front or the back, or sometimes both, there's a ton of fans that can be like hairdryers and just push air through everything. Which is kind of like the Trashcan Mac, where they tried that on its side but with no fans, so it passively cooled. If they do it actively with fans here, I think that's actually a really good design choice. Because it means that as long as the whole thing's sealed, which... another thing that I'm going to give them credit for, the entire outside shell of the case slides on and clicks. So this little graphic, it's got a handle on the top that's a twist lock. So if anything's faulty inside your Mac, you pull the handle up, you twist it, you pull, and you're in. You fix the thing, or you add more RAM, or you do whatever it is you got to do. You put the top back on, you click. I think that's really...
Unless they glue it all in.
Well, yeah. But hopefully they've learned from that mistake, because for a pro market, that's going to kill it if they do that. Yeah. So, it's going to be really expensive, but I hope that it works out. I mean, one of the things about having this many PCI Express slots for audio producers is Pro Tools has HDX cards, which do all the processing if you're an Ultimate Pro Tools user. If you're not big on graphics cards, so you're only using one slot, that means you've got another 7 slots free. I think Avid said this machine would support up to 6 of these Pro Tools cards. So that's something like a bazillion channels that it could do. I mean, this is the kind of machine with a 28-core processor, a terabyte of RAM, and 6 of those cards, that without any hint of a joke, someone like Hans Zimmer could have his entire orchestra set up on one of these machines, where right now I know that he's using 3 trash can Macs with all the Thunderbolt stuff glued to it, and they're all synchronized.
Right.
Because they have to be, because none of them are powerful enough to run a Hans Zimmer orchestra. So he's literally got 3 rigs running because
He's still using a Mac.
Well, yeah, but at Hans Zimmer's level, he's not worried about money. He is that guy who's like, here's money, make it work.
Yeah, so someone build him a PC.
Yeah. It is one of those things where a lot of audio producers just use Macs. It is quite infuriating, I find, but it is what it is. And more users are moving away, but yeah. Has it got 1 million Thunderbolt lanes? Yes. One of the things that did kind of disappoint me from the first glance was, and there's a picture here, there's only a couple of USB-A slots and a couple of USB-C slots by default, but you can add more expansion cards in with more USB or that kind of, or Thunderbolt or whatever.
Each.
Yeah, probably. It's got 10 gigabit Ethernet inbuilt as well, which I thought, if you're going to have external storage, that'll do 800 megabytes a second. That's fine for me. And that's 800 megabytes a second after overheads. That's plenty fast enough as far as I'm concerned. Or was it?
Seems like a waste of.
What?
It just seems like a waste of money to me.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's it. We're not the kind of people that are going to buy it. I'm certainly not.
I used to be. I remember when before the trash can ones, the series before that, so the G5s and then going into the first Pentiums, I loved Mac. That 2011 Mac, I absolutely loved it at the time. I would have wished that I could have all Macs. And then now, just looking at it, I just, no.
The funny thing for me is, if I won the lottery tomorrow and I could have any machine that I wanted, I still don't know if I'd get one. But I might.
I would.
For what?
iMacs are different. The displays, yeah, that's one thing. We talked about that already.
Well, we briefly mentioned it. The screens are ridiculously priced. Mac Pro screen, but from what everybody's been saying.
I meant the older ones, like the one that I've got and stuff.
Oh, this new one. If I could, editing our videos or even just clients' videos, I would have one of these 6K XDR.
It's the equivalent of like a 50 grand monitor, isn't it?
Yeah, the stats on it are absolutely like cutting edge. But
like perfect colours and stuff.
Yeah. The only thing that's annoyed me is the separate stand costs $1,000 and the screen costs $5,000. That's a marketing misstep. That's what annoys me. If the screen came with the stand and cost $6,000, nobody would blink.
Well, they would. It's a $6,000 screen.
Well, they'd say ouch, but the justification that you're comparing it to a $50,000 screen and saying it's that good, people would have gone, okay. But when you say, oh, the stand costs $1,000, people are going to go, X flipping, excuse me. Like I did.
The Visa mount thing was the biggest mistake, actually. Like, to put that in with the cost of it, so you've got a Visa mounted screen for 5,100. Okay, cool. But selling that as so basically you can have it, but there's no way to do anything with it other than lie it down.
Yeah.
I think that's just bullshit.
Yeah, that's what's not right about it, definitely. Yeah, it's just one of those marketing missteps where someone should have stepped in and gone, guys, this is not going to go down well. But yeah, I tell you what, if I had lots of money, I would get 2 of these.
Yeah.
And happily edit all day in the studio with those screens because, oh
yeah, I mean, I would.
Yeah.
What's the refresh rate on them?
I think that's the one thing you don't get is high refresh. Because it's not for people who need high refresh.
I don't know. If you're editing 3D video, you'd think you probably would.
You'd probably need a 3D screen though.
Only to be doing some parts of it, but if you're literally trying to play stuff back.
Yeah, but I mean, who's editing video that's above 60 FPS right now? Even in HDR?
Mm.
I mean, I've got source footage that's way above 60, but generally I'm using that in actually mostly 25 or 24 frames a second and sometimes 60. I don't even like 60 FPS, but I've finally come to that decision. Because I used to be like, hey, high frame rate, that's a good thing, and no, I don't like it. But one thing that did impress me is it's 1,000 nits of brightness all the time, which is bloody bright, and it can hit a peak of 1,600 nits, which is enough to really hurt your eyes.
What's the measurement? A nip?
Nit, N-I-T.
Okay.
It's kind of like candle power, but it's a much better measurement, apparently.
Ah, okay. I've not heard it before.
Yeah, nits have become a thing in terms of brightness since HDR became a big deal.
Right.
Because it's a much better way of measuring how bright a screen can actually get, rather than just turning the brightness up and putting a white screen on for a bit and going, well, that's good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm really starting to read up about a lot of this kind of stuff since HDR's become a thing, because what a screen's capable of, as opposed to just how nice it looks, is becoming more important.
Yeah. I think it goes up to 60.
Yeah, okay. Well, that makes sense to me, because even though it would be nice for it to be high refresh, I think in this case, going with the high definition and colour gamut, it were definitely the priorities. And I saw a Linus Tech Tips video only today, actually, which might interest you. I think it was a 27-inch, 240 FPS IPS panel, which was kind of the first of its kind. Because usually 240 FPS screens are TN panels, which are not nearly as good in terms of colour reproduction, even though the speed is faster. And IPS being much more pretty. Yeah, that's a thing now. So check that out, my fellow nerd.
Yeah, I'm 27 IPS. Mine's 144. So.
Oh, fair enough. That's.
It does what my eyes can see. So.
Yes. Fair enough. So let's put a hold on talking about the desktop, and let's start to talk about the mobile, because for me and some of the videos that we've done on the channel, I think ipadOS is going to be a big deal. ipadOS is basically iOS 13, but they're branching off the way that they write the operating systems in terms of the UI and that kind of thing. So, yeah, I don't know if it's going to be from the same code base from here on out, but the general gist, I think, was, like, you can just see on this clip here that instead of just splaying all the icons across the screen, there's stuff on the screen that would be useful to me at the same time as seeing all my apps. Stuff like Safari's going to natively come across as a desktop browser now. Not that I'll ever use Safari, but hopefully Chrome will follow suit. Something that's very important that I read for audio guys is inter-app audio and the old version of Audio Bus are going to be killed off. They're not going to work anymore, which I am happy about, because they're old standards of getting one sound from one app to another, and they're kind of terrible because they crash a lot, they're not very flexible, but the new Audio Bus 3 standard is much better and means that you can get audio from one track of one app to another track of another app without the whole thing tying up the entire damn system.
Okay.
Which means that, say, you'll be able to use an external synth with something like Cubase on an iPad without it causing massive bottlenecking issues or stopping you from using any other apps at the same time, which was
That's
originally one of the big problems. Yeah, it does mean that any apps that exist so far that rely on the older standards are not going to work anymore.
Yeah.
But hopefully that'll spur creators into making new versions, which I think is very exciting. You know, the new iPad Pro's got a native USB-C port. They've changed ipadOS, so you'll just be able to use external USB drives now.
Yeah, that's huge.
That's massive. Because it means you can just plug it in. They've rewritten the entire USB stack in iOS, apparently, so that you can safely have it sandboxed, put files on there, take them off, and then just give that USB stick to somebody else, and they're not worried about it putting viruses on your iPad. I mean, that's going to happen inevitably, I'm sure, because that's a point of ingress, and someone's going to do it because it's going to be a target. But hopefully it'll be a while before that happens.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah. The older iPad Pro, which is the one that I use, the 12.9-inch version, if you use one of the dongles, which is a USB to Lightning adapter, they'll work absolutely fine. The old one's USB 2 and the newer one is USB 3, which means you'll be able to use USB sticks at USB 3 speed with an iPad Pro, which takes a lot of the weighting out of it. Especially for audio guys, I think that's going to be huge, because it means you're going to be able to put all the audio files of projects on a USB stick, upload it to your iPad, download them off your iPad, which has been a real pain up to now, and get them onto a desktop machine and email to somebody, or literally just give them to your producer without you needing a laptop. Yeah. Android really needs to get ACO. I agree, but it doesn't have it, which is why, even though I'm quite a staunchly PC guy on desktop, I've become an Apple guy when I'm making music on mobile, because it's the only platform that's got decent audio on mobile right now.
And you've got that lovely iPad Pro.
I do, but I'm not being given any incentive to jump. There's literally no way that Samsung or Huawei, who basically have just been banned, or LG or anybody have got any products to entice me away.
The best thing though about iPads, and none of the tablet makers that, in my experience, can match it, is just the standby. You can leave an iPad on for a week on a standby, and you'll come back and it's gone down 10%. Like, they're amazing.
That is true.
When you got Android tablets and stuff, they just can't hold their charge the same.
They just can't hold the liquor.
Yeah, they just can't.
Yeah. Well, there was something else that... Let's just have a quick flick through. Yes, multi-screen on ipadOS. Because right now, you can split the screen and have two apps running, but it's kind of finicky and it only works with certain apps. And now you'll be able to do things like have the same app running twice split. So like you could have two Word documents or two copies of Chrome split. Or things like that will massively change the game for someone like me, probably someone like you as well. If I've got two Chrome tabs side by side, I can suddenly start dragging and dropping and referencing material on one whilst writing on another, and that kind of thing's really, really going to change things for me. And even as an audio guy, having something like GarageBand or Cubase on one side and a synth open on the other side... I saw it might have been the bottom of this article, that within the year, if I'm right, that feature is going to become mandatory for developers to put in there. So one of the big issues that we've had with split screen is that a lot of developers have gone, we'll get round to it. If it's mandatory, it's obviously going to have to happen. Which means that then there's going to be no reason that you're not going to be able to do two things at once on a sufficiently powerful iPad.
Yeah.
Which brings it so much closer to desktop territory.
Yeah.
Oh, and in OS X, the new one, apparently you're going to be able to run iPad apps on MacBooks and Mac Pros and desktop machines.
Oh yeah, I saw that come in.
Yeah, kind of like an abstraction layer.
Mm-hmm.
Which I guess means that if you do have some specific iPad app that you really like, and it's really getting difficult to get all the data out, maybe you could then run that app on the Mac and sort it out that way, I guess.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that use I forget the name of it, the drawing program that Ash uses.
Instagram.
With her Apple Pencil, it works really well because it's designed for an iPad. So
Yeah.
you've got the Apple Pencil, it works really, really well.
Oh, one last thing on the iPad. You remember years ago I talked about the Duet Display app where you can run...
Yeah. I've heard about that. Yeah.
Where you can run it as a second screen. Apparently that's going to be a native thing now.
For Macs.
For Macs, yeah. You might still need Duet Display for PCs, but what do they call it? Sidecar? That's the one. Yeah, where you can just plug USB from your iPad into your Mac and then have a second screen like that. I mean, we've been doing that for years, but it'll be officially supported. Yeah.
Procreate, that's what it's called.
Right.
The design program. It's really good. So I can see people wanting to use Procreate on their Mac if they're designing some like nice stuff with it.
Yeah. So let's have a quick look at the iOS 13 article, because iOS...
Off topic, but which machine do you find more compelling, the Xbox 2 or the PS5? Later we'll get onto that.
Yeah.
Very off topic.
We'll
but
talk
I'm interested.
We'll talk about that. Dark mode. I know you're a big fan of dark mode.
Yes, I am in dark mode right now. It annoys me when I open Windows and it's not in dark mode.
At first,
I also judge people when I see people on Reddit and it's white. It's like, oh my god, you're a heathen.
Yeah. So having the entire OS have a dark mode.
Windows 10 has that. That's what I'm using at the moment. So
right, I'm generally not a dark mode user, but I think especially with my phone when I'm in bed and not trying to wake people up, I'll probably end up with dark mode on all the time.
Yep. So I.
Yeah. So that was a nice thing. The public beta comes out in July. I have my iPad on the beta program, so hopefully I'm going to be able to test that fairly early on. Yeah. That's the compatibility list. So iPhone 6s or later, iPad Air 2 or later.
6s?
Yes.
So I won't edit my iPhone then.
Oh, you still on 6? Yeah.
So I officially need a new phone.
Yeah. It won't be on the iPad Mini 2 or 3 either. Well, that's if you desperately
ones
need
we've got 4s?
Are they? It says the new iPad Mini 4. I don't know.
I'm sure it's a Mini 4.
We'll check it
out.
out.
Yeah, because that's what it was actually called. It was called the new iPad Mini 4.
Oh, right, okay.
I'm sure that was the name of it.
They keep saying in this article the new iPad Mini 4, so I wouldn't mind betting that's actually the name of it. Not that iOS 12 is bad, but apparently iOS 13 everything loads up 50% faster.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah, the iPad Mini 4 was discontinued in March 18.
Yeah. The only way, thinking about it, to get all your apps to load up 50% faster and your downloads be 60% smaller or whatever the name was, I reckon they're just trimming out a lot of old, outdated parts of the system that are just getting repeated over and over, like the libraries, which will just be... They'll be downloading the same libraries over and over again in app updates. And so if they can just cut all that out and just have them just on the machine to begin with, and then, yeah, just cut out a lot of the extraneous crap that's taking up CPU cycles. I mean, how else are you going to speed things up by that much in software?
Yeah, I don't know.
Just basically cut the crap, I think. I mean, there'll be loads of calls in the OS that go back as far as iOS 3, iOS 4, trying to look for devices that are no longer supported, trying to look for like 32-bit hardware and that kind of thing. they'll have stripped out a lot of the legacy stuff. And then if you go, oh, well, my 5-year-old program doesn't work. Yeah, tough. So update it. That will be the way that they've looked at it, because there's no other way to go that fast in one generational leap. Especially not without changing the hardware.
No. How do you tell what phone you've got?
You shout at it. Actually, that's
What
only...
phone are you? No, it's not.
I'm only half joking. If you do the hey...
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not going to say it because
Hey
mine'll...
Siri, what type of phone are you? I'm not sure I understand. No. What model of iPhone are you? Everything you need to know. No, doesn't do it.
That's annoying. Surely it'd be under settings and general somewhere. About.
Yeah, I'm on the about page, doesn't do it. Anyway.
Yeah, this one's an iPhone 7 that I'm on. Cutting edge.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah, so it's going to run fast and it's going to have dark mode and iPad quick path keyboard, whatever that means. You can try
they finally have swiping on keyboards now. You know, that Android have had for about 3 million years.
Yeah. I'll have to try it. I'm not sure if...
You'll get used... I think it might... Oh, no, this is an S... Oh, this is a success.
Success!
There you go. Boom. What did it say about the iPad Pro?
It didn't mention the iPad Pro, so I would assume that they're just going to be supported, because they're definitely...
We've got the first generation one, haven't we?
Yes. But it's still fully 64-bit architecture. It's relatively... When we got them, they were literally cutting edge. So they're only just 2 generations old. So, yeah, I'm sure that's fine. What else we got? Yeah. Find My app is basically just Find My Friends and Find My iPad rolled into one, so it's not really a new thing. Blur, 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 blur. Lots of percents are faster. Reminders are getting an overhaul. Camera and portrait mode changes don't really affect us audio guys. New Siri voice sounds more natural. Yeah, sure, great. Memoji next. Nobody used the animojis. I don't know why they're still chasing this thing.
I don't.
HomePod, bleh. Sign in with Apple. I thought that was both terrifying and interesting all at once.
I've been waiting for this to come. This seems like an absolute no-brainer for them.
I'm sure you've mentioned it before. But yeah, it does, or it will get people away from sign in with Facebook, sign in with Google. Yeah, which doesn't really work for me now, because everything that I do is tied to one particular provider, because I've been using them for so long.
See, you know what's a weird thing? I don't know why this is the case, but I definitely... Of Facebook, Google and Apple, for some reason, even though they had the whole hacking of photos like years ago, I feel like I trust them more. Maybe Google the most, actually. Maybe Google. In terms of security. I definitely trust them. I'd rather sign in with Apple than with Facebook.
Yeah, out of the 3 of them, I trust Facebook the least. Yeah. But maybe that's because Google don't have a social thing in the way that Facebook do, apart from YouTube, which I kind of want them to be tied in with me because of the YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Well, so Google have their own servers as well, so they're looking after their own rather than looking after something on behalf of someone else.
And give them the credit, Google, I think, have always been fairly on top of keeping on top of being up to date with security methods and that kind of thing. OAuth, Open Authentication, they were one of the first companies to use that widespread, which meant that when everyone else was getting hacked left, right and centre, they were ahead of that curve.
Actually, talking about companies using other companies for server usage, did you hear that PlayStation have done a deal with Microsoft?
I did not.
Yep. So all of PlayStation's cloud-based stuff are going to be on Microsoft servers. They're moving away from Amazon. They've managed to do a deal, and Sony did the deal and the PlayStation team didn't actually know about it. Like they
Wow.
weren't as informed. Like it was done kind of over their head pretty much. But it's a
Right.
huge partnership between the two of them, which could be massive. It's like again off topic, but it's interesting.
Yeah. I think it makes a lot of sense. What people don't realise now with Microsoft's business model is they're much, much, much bigger and more profitable in server and cloud now than they are in anything else. The Xbox is a blip on the radar compared to the server and cloud stuff that they do. Windows is a drop in the ocean now because of the fact that they didn't even charge people for Windows 10.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, their Azure servers are really starting to be impressive.
Funnily enough, on this page I'm on right now, that's an Azure advert. Yeah. Ugh. Creepy.
They're listening.
Text
formatting in mail, wow.
Yeah, wow, such text, many mail. Nah, I've used Gmail for too long, I'm good.
Oh yeah, PS4 controller support, that's big.
Yeah, that's really nice. Xbox One controller support, which means, for me, that's big.
You could do that anyway.
What, on iOS?
Sure, there was a way to do it.
Only some sort of hack way. There's been no official way by a long way, I'm sure. You've been able to use Bluetooth non-proprietary, non-Xbox, non-PS4 controllers. Maybe you've been able to use PS4 ones if you really found a way around. Xbox ones definitely not, because they've been working on their own kind of protocol. On the Bluetooth bandwidth, but you'd need a different stack, or at least some sort of authorization, which, looking at it, great. Yeah, I might have to use a USB cable with my Xbox One controllers because they're the older ones that don't have Bluetooth in. But still, getting my iPad Pro out while I'm on a flight or that kind of thing and playing a game with a controller, I'll be much happier.
I've got my Steam Link as well in my other room.
Yeah.
So Steam Link plus iPad Pro.
Funnily enough, I've not played a game on my phone or my iPad in well over a year because touch controls annoy the hell out of me. Like, especially on the iPad Pro, it's unwieldy and genuinely quite painful. It's almost as if it's going to waste, this hardware, but because I use it for audio production and that kind of thing, it's been great.
I tried to play a offline game of Dota on my iPad. It was hilarious.
What?
You've got to press... Well, yeah, because I've got a Steam Link, so I was able to open up Steam on my iPad with my Steam Link and use touch controls in Dota. So I'm there having to, like, two-finger tap just to move around the map and then, like, drag in order to get off the screen. It was hilarious.
Sounds awful.
It's completely impossible, but theoretically doable.
Yeah. Question from the chat. Would I suggest an iPad or a MacBook for ease of use to control a Midas M32 wirelessly? iPad all day long. In the place where the reason that I work in a bar is that we have a large live venue and I quite often operate the sound. That's the entire reason I'm there. And a lot of the time I'll work with an engineer who'll bring in either an X32 or an M32 and we'll daisy chain it. And we'll always, always, always use an iPad because in the live arena, speed is everything. If there's something going wrong with the channel and you've got an iPad, you can go, click to this bank, click that channel, click EQ drag. Done. On a MacBook, you're scrolling through menus, you're using the touchpad, it's not nearly as intuitive. When you've got a 31 band EQ and it's all touch screen, you can literally look at the band you want and pull it down or push it up. That in itself is absolutely indispensable live. I couldn't imagine using a digital mixing desk without an iPad now. Because without that speed of interactivity, the whole thing's kind of useless because it's just a paperweight that doesn't do anything until you control it. The entire point of an analog mixing desk now, if you're ever to use one, is the fact that everything's laid out in front of you for immediate use. If you've got a device in your hand that does something very similar and you can work that quickly, that's what replaces it, not the hardware itself, your speed of control. Oh, you can use a MacBook if you're absolutely stuck and your iPad breaks. But yeah, no. Although I would massively suggest if you've got an M32, X32, any of the Behringer XAirs, connect them to a separate wireless router. Get yourself a separate wireless router and configure that and connect them up via Ethernet, because the inbuilt Wi-Fi is rubbish. It's slow, it's laggy, but if you connect it up to a dedicated router, you can have 60 frame a second real-time feedback of everything that's happening, and it makes a massive difference. It's something that I did for years with a Behringer XAir. I think it was an XR18 with the band that I was touring with, and I would control all the sound on my iPad. At the same time as using the same iPad for all the lyrics, I would just switch between apps. But that's because by the time the show got started, I would have very little change that I'd need. But let's say a microphone started feeding back and I was playing, I could very quickly switch to the iPad app, look at the channel that's feeding back, pull it down a little, take the next few seconds to pull the EQ up, find that ring, dial it out, go back to my lyrics. And nobody in the crowd would know any different. You try doing that with a MacBook.
Yeah. No, not at all. It's like,
No.
They say mobility and speed, like, you just can't compare, can you?
Yeah, the speed is the selling point of that setup. That's why digital mixers with iPads have become the winning combination, where most new digital desks that are sold now are sold with that in mind. And even designed with that in mind. A lot of them live and die by the quality of their app that controls the desk. Like, Midas M32s and Behringer X32s, these mixing desks, they have full controls on them. And quite often, I'll see the engineers leave that desk at the side of the stage, plug all the stuff into it, and then go and walk off to the back and just use the iPad, because it's quicker than actually using physical controls.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you start getting into the nitty-gritty of compressors and gates and EQs. And on a screen, it's right there, and it's like child's play. And on the machine, it's like, where's this knob? Where's that knob? Yeah. I think that's the end of the iOS 13 stuff anyway. So, any more questions from the chat? We've had a lot today. This is good. Question from Sam. Oh, go on.
I was going to say, do you want to go through iTunes as well?
Oh, yeah. iTunes shutting down. This one's probably going to be quite brief, because iTunes isn't really shutting down as far as I can see. What I gather that they're doing is a rebrand. So they're splitting the app into Apple Music, TV, and Podcast, but Podcast already exists. And so does the TV app. So they're basically just renaming iTunes to Music and just getting the video stuff and putting them in the correct
you've already
apps.
got iTunes Music as a separate... Oh, Apple Music, sorry, is it already... So, like, these three apps already exist.
Yeah, so that's it. It's more of a reshuffle.
Yeah, but so when I plug my phone into my computer now and want to sync stuff, what am I going to sync it to?
I would imagine they'll rebrand it to Apple Music. But then here, yeah, that's a difficult question, I guess, because who has MP3s now?
Yeah.
It's getting... like, I've still got an iPod Classic in my car, in the glove box.
I was playing an iPod Classic today. We found... Oh, I actually got a little video of it. Hold up. I managed to... Oh, that's my speaker.
Let's just change camera angle so we can see you a bit better.
Alright.
Go on.
See?
Is that
one of my
second generation? Third generation?
It's first or second.
Must be at least second, because the first one actually had a physical wheel.
Oh yeah, the physical. Yeah, it was the one after that one. Yeah.
So it's the second generation, yeah.
So I found that in a drawer with the old speaker that's got a little dock for it, which is an Angry Bird thing. We used to have it in the office. Ash managed to get it working, and found music from when I was mixing and stuff at uni. I found like some old friends' albums and stuff from Ex Cathedra. It's like, man, and that interestingly is music that had disappeared when MySpace lost all that music, and
Wow.
I managed to find it on an old iPod 2 or 3.
That's awesome. Yeah, so the iPod that I've got is much newer, but the hard drive had died, and the battery was also beyond use. So I stripped those out and I put a compact flash card in it and a whole new double-sized battery, because the compact flash card was half the size of the old hard drive. Turns out that while I was doing it, I think I killed the headphone output, which is a massive shame. I could get a replacement part for it, but the actual USB connection still works, and my car can control an iPod and pull up all the album choices and that kind of thing, so I keep it in the glove box. And then literally every album I've ever owned is at my fingertips without clogging up 60 gigabytes of my phone's memory. Yeah, so that's why I've got it, is if I want to reach into my music library, I don't have to be in an area with internet. Because Spotify's great. Operating Spotify whilst driving is not doable. It's just not a thing. And most of the time, I pick music while I'm on long drives. I drive a lot. Just to give our viewers an idea, in the 2.5 years that I've owned my car, I've put nearly 100,000 miles on it. Yeah, because I drive to these shows that might be on the other side of the country. I used to live 100 miles away from where I was working. I drive a lot. I mean, sometimes now I drive less than I used to, but I still drive a lot, and that means I get to listen to a lot of music. I see it as a positive. I mean, get a 3-hour prog multi-album epic, and I can listen to the whole thing. Where's the problem? But
It's just podcasts.
yeah,
When I'm driving, it has to be a podcast.
I've kind of burnt out on podcasts for a while now, because I went through a 6-month podcast binge, and I got to the point now where I don't want to hear people talking for a while. I want to hear music again.
Yeah,
I'll come back to them, I'm sure, but yeah, for a little while now I've got to the point where I'm just like, enough, done. I don't want to hear people's voices. But yeah, I think that's just a phase.
Indeed.
But yeah.
Cool.
Yes. Questions, and then we'll wrap up. Given some of the top-end interfaces can run a load of plugins natively, it seems to make sense that they would go a tiny step further and have a native cut-down desktop DAW in there? What? There's a lot more goes into how a DAW works than perhaps our dear viewer realises. Because to run a DAW, you need, for a start, a screen. At least one screen, and that's a lot of programming and hardware that the interface would need just to do that. Then it would need to somehow record audio. It's I mean, actual hardware-based recorders have been a thing for years. Look at radar systems. Radar, not the technology radar, but it's short for something. But they're like hard drive-based recorders that a lot of come on, brain. A lot of studios used radar for a long time because it was reliable, because there's no Windows, there's no OS X, there's none of that. You turn it on, you record, they don't crash. And I get that, but what audio interface manufacturer now is going to be insane enough to add in, unless we're talking about the Behringer X32s and that kind of thing, and they can do that, actually. You can stick, on a Behringer X32, you can stick a USB hard drive on it, and you can have it record all 32 tracks at once. And then you can have it play them all back. So perhaps those systems wouldn't need that much more. Yeah, I can see where you're going now with that a bit. Yeah, maybe. But again, which hardware manufacturer would be insane enough to do that? It'd probably be Behringer, let's be honest. because they've got more money than sense. They can throw money at stuff like that, and if it doesn't pan out, they're not really bothered. Uli Behringer from Behringer, he's nuts. He's
He
just
is
like,
indeed.
yeah, we're gonna do this. Yeah, we're gonna do that. Let's do 2,000 of these. Sure, why not? Yeah. Any more questions? Any more questions?
It was the off-topic. Which machine do you find more
yeah.
compelling, Xbox or PS5? Well, they haven't announced it's been Xbox 2 yet, but yeah, the new Xbox 100%. Given that they're doing two different consoles, one which is going to be the new sexy upgrade machine that can do everything, and then one that is just going to be a portal for your cloud gaming experience. I think that is the way that gaming's going, especially casual gaming. I've tried quite a few of the services for streaming and for sort of low latency like FPS games and trying to be competitive. I think they still can't cut it because you're adding at the very least an extra 25 millisecond ping. So if you want to be competitive at a game, it's not going to work, and you're going to want the new sort of sexy Xbox. But if you're just playing with your friends or kids online playing Fortnite, an extra 20 milliseconds is going to make a huge difference on the grand scheme of things. Then yeah, having a box that's going to cost like 120 quid and allows you access to whatever games you want by getting, say, Xbox Game Pass and just playing them. Like literally, I want to play a new game. Okay, there you go. It's live. It's streaming from somewhere else. I don't think PlayStation can compete with that. They're trying to compete with it. That's part of the reason why they're partnered with Microsoft. But I think this generation, I can't see Xbox losing.
Yeah.
But
It's going to be, I think it's going to be a fairly even footing. But yeah, this is something where I think, even though I also would go with the Xbox because I'm quite a solid Xbox user. I've got one in the front room that we use with voice activation and all that kind of stuff.
I've got both. I've got PSVR. Like, I think at the moment, I don't think there's. I think PlayStation's got the edge, and this generation they've killed it with their first party games. So you can't compete. Oh, sorry, go on.
I think it's interesting how we would come down on different sides of that result. That you would definitely, without doubt, be one of the guys who would buy the big all singing, all dancing, 0 millisecond latency box that works in real time.
No, for an Xbox I wouldn't, because my gaming experience on the console is different. PC gaming, yeah. I couldn't deal with a streaming box on PC. I've tried it and like try to play CS:GO, and it's just like nope. Like, if there's extra latency, you can feel it, especially when I'm playing like 144 hertz. I can definitely feel the lag. I think you tried it, didn't you, when we had it? I did in the studio.
Yeah, and it felt like you were slightly on the moon. Yeah.
But I could just feel it more. But with a console, nah, that is just purely for fun. There's no competitive element of it. Like I'm not good enough. That's like the latency, the 24 millisecond latency with an Xbox controller. Now, when I was a kid, maybe, yeah, but now, like, no. There's probably a good 200 milliseconds of inability to play well that I need to compensate for first. So.
Yeah. I would definitely be one of the streaming ones, because I don't play a great deal of games now. And I mean, I'd probably be one of those people where if it was on a monthly subscription, I'd probably cancel it and then get it for that 1 month I want it, and then just cancel it again like I do with Netflix.
Yeah.
Or
and if you're only
service.
investing like 100 quid for the original box as well, and
Yeah.
it allows you to use Xbox One controllers, then basically, yeah, for 100 quid, you can have access to streaming games if you want to. Yeah, that's awesome. And just think about it just from a parenting point of view, like, there's no way that parents aren't going to get that box. It's like, okay, what do I want? The one where I've got to buy the 50 quid games, or the one that has a library of all the new first-party games that come out are included for $5.99 a month. Ooh, going dark.
Dark mode.
You just can't compete with that. Like, I've got Game Pass, and the other night I just was like, oh, Monster Hunter World's come on there. Cool. That's a 50 quid game I almost bought but didn't. And now I just started playing that. It's included in my subscription. And then the first character you meet is voiced by Matthew Mercer, and I've just been watching Critical Role, so I was like, this is really weird. Am I just hearing Matt everywhere now? Because I watch that all the time.
Oh god, hearing voice actors in different things freaks me out.
Yeah.
I've been watching a lot of children's TV recently for obvious reasons with child, and so many voice actors that you wouldn't expect doing these shows, and you're just like, I know that voice.
Mr. P, yes, the cake was a lie. It's also a lie on Reddit as well.
Yeah. Well, it's fascinating. I mean, I think Microsoft could absolutely nail the market shut by having that $5.99 a month thing, and instead of charging people 50 quid for the new game, charge them a tenner for early access.
No, that is Game Pass. Like Game Pass is $6.99 a month, and all the first-party games are included.
But brand new first-party games?
Yep.
I thought it was ones that had been out a certain
Nope.
window, like an exclusivity clause type
Nope.
thing?
So Sea of Thieves came out. The day it came out, it was free. Same with State of Decay. I can't remember what's come out more recently. But yeah, if it's first party, if it's by a Microsoft studio, and they've been buying up a lot of smaller studios, if it's by any one of those, then it's instantly included.
Right. But do you think that would include all the AAA titles?
No, so it's not the third-party titles. But
Yeah,
then,
so that's what. Sorry, that's
it's
what
all
I'm
the
getting
first.
at.
It's all the first-party titles, which is the reason why you'd pick one or the other. So the third-party games are on both. So you're picking a console pretty much really because either you prefer the controller ultimately, or your friends are on one of them and you can't convince them to change, or the first-party games. They're the only three things because performance-wise they're the same. And if you're going for first-party games, okay, that's where PlayStation had the lead massively last generation. And I think they're still going to have the lead going into the next generation with kind of Last of Us 2 coming out, Death Stranding coming out. But Microsoft have got the thing of, well, the first-party games for them, though, you don't pay for. So.
Yeah. Fair enough. A couple more questions to round it out. One from Dr. Knight going, where do you see the next big leap forward in terms of IR's sound quality coming from? That's going to have to be, if we're talking about IR specifically for guitar cabinets, it's going to have to be some sort of proprietary system that someone comes out with, because physics. The way that impulse responses work, they're a capture of a certain point in time, which for something like a speaker, there is a limit on that, so the only way to improve on that is going to be to somehow make that move by, I don't know, having multiple versions of a speaker or something like that. That's where it's going to have to move past traditional impulse response capture. And when it does, I'm going to definitely keep my ear to the ground and be part of that, because I want to be on the cutting edge there. But when somebody comes out with something that's solid and definitely does the thing, I'll be by the phone, ready to place those calls. And last but not least, would you use different DAWs for recording and mixing? For example, Pro Tools for recording and Cubase for mixing. Would I? No. Given a choice, I'm Reaper for both. I will nail my colours to the mast. I love it. But I know a lot of people who do, and I understand why, and I have no issue with it. I get it. That certain DAWs are better for recording and certain ones are better for mixing. What I have done in the past is I've worked with electronic guys on something like Ableton Live, which is, typical electronic DAW, because they find it's much more efficient for them to write that way in like loops and blocks, and then when they're happy with all the separate parts, I get them to then give me all the separate parts as WAV files, and then I mix them in my favourite DAW, whatever that may be, which for me is generally Reaper, but it could be Cubase, could be Pro Tools, Logic. I know a lot of bands, Periphery are a great example of this. They tend to write drum parts in Cubase, they tend to record in Logic, and then mix in whatever, sometimes Pro Tools. But they're a bit of an odd one because they've got like 4 different guys in the band who are all capable of being professional recording engineers. They've all got their own ways of doing things, and they've worked out some system where each one of them, when they're working, they're allowed to just get on with it their way, as long as they then pass the baton properly for the next guy. And that works for them. And if you have the discipline to do that, great. And maybe it's quite freeing. I mean, I have thinking about it, if I'm recording and I'm using, say, virtual guitar amps, virtual drums, that kind of thing, it might be quite good for the mind to then just export all the separate tracks as audio, print that down, forget about everything, and then just from a mindset perspective, just go, okay, here's the song. I can't change anything now. How do we make this sound the best it can sound?
Mm-hmm.
And that could be a really good way to clear the mind and start fresh and not be not going back and second guessing yourself in terms of, oh, I should have changed this, I should have changed that. It's not the way that I work. I do tend to work with every option open to me. But I've been doing this, I think, long enough that I've got beyond the typical option paralysis problem, where you go back halfway through your work and you start changing everything.
Mm-hmm.
I only go back and change small things in the original recordings now if I'm getting halfway through mixing and I realise there's an issue that would be better fixed by going back to the original material, like virtual guitar amps or virtual drum choices or whatever options were left open to me. I don't tend to touch them unless something's really not working. And I, at this point, am confident enough in what I do that most of the time I go, well, when you were recording this, that was the sound you chose. Why did you choose that? Probably because it was good. Leave it alone. Sometimes you have to tell yourself off like a naughty little child and say, stop messing around with it. Behave yourself.
Stop it.
Yeah, stop it. Because you felt like it was right in the first place. Why are you changing it now? Don't doubt yourself. But if you're one of those people who is suffering a little from doubt and option paralysis, lock it down. Maybe do move to a different DAW, because that forces you and limits you into having to work with what you have. You might find yourself getting better results faster that way.
Who knows?
Yeah. Like I say, it's not the way I do it, but it doesn't mean it's an invalid way of working. Maybe I'll try that sometime. There's never enough hours in the day, but yeah.
Sage advice.
There's always something to learn. I mean, yeah. Thinking about it, we have worked in one DAW and then sent stuff over before, but that's generally when we're working for another third-party client, usually when we're working in film, and they insist on something like, say, a Pro Tools project, which is very common in the film industry. I like working in Reaper. I find it really fast, so I'll record everything in Reaper, and then when we've got the takes decided on, I'll then export that, pull it into a Pro Tools project, send the Pro Tools project, and they're happy. And I've done the job in minimal amount of time, so sometimes it's a practical reason. Sometimes it's being all things to all people. But from a creative decision, no, it's not something I would do, but I won't say don't do it. Yeah. That might be a good place to end it.
I think so. We've been going for almost 2 hours.
Oh, jeez. Right, okay. Well, yes, it is time to disappear and finish making plans.
Hi, everybody.
Yes, good night, everybody. And I'll be in the studio this week to film lots of videos, because I've got lots to catch up on. Got 2 Celestion speakers to film, and the Cab M from 2 Notes, Sennheiser Pro 500 IEMs. So much to do, so little time. So thank you, everybody. I'm going to get writing for filming, and we'll see you.
I'm going to be in Le Mans next week, so even if I could get on, all you're going to hear is so proper pole position though. So I'll get some photos and I'll do some audio recording for it. But
awesome.
Oh yeah, and happy birthday if I don't see you before.
Thank you very much. Well, you probably should see me before, because I'm going to have to swing by the studio before my show on Saturday.
Cool.
So I'll see you very soon. And
Adios.
I'll see everybody else next week. Goodbye!
Bye.